Long live your majesty. You may take anything I possess, my lands, my animals, but not my wife. I would rather die than see her taken from me. The king's laughter grew louder, more menacing. I admire your courage, young man, but it seems you have not been firm enough. How dare you challenge me? Let me remind you, I am your king. I own you. I own your wife. I own everyone and everything in this kingdom, and I will do as I please, with whom and what I please. You choose to die for your wife? Then so be it. Before anyone could say anything, King Afamefuna took out his sword and cut off Jideofor's head in front of his hut before the eyes of the villagers. Long time ago, in the once peaceful village of Amoria, lived a king named Afamefuna. His name alone sent shivers down the spines of even the bravest warriors. Stories of his cruelty spread like wildfire. How he laughed as his guards meted out harsh punishments. How he reveled in the fear that consumed the villagers. And how his eyes gleamed with dark satisfaction whenever someone trembled in his presence. Afamefuna had grown up under the rule of his father, King Obinna, a man revered not only for his wisdom, but also for his compassion. King Obinna's reign was marked by peace and prosperity, where disputes were settled with patience and justice was served with fairness. The people loved him, and their respect was evident in the way they bowed, not out of fear, but out of genuine admiration. But to Afamefuna, his father's reign was an example of weakness. He could not understand how a king could be so gentle, so forgiving. To him, a king was meant to be a force of power, an untouchable figure who ruled with an iron fist. A king was meant to be feared, not loved. So when King Obinna passed away and Afamefuna ascended the throne, he vowed to lead with a different hand, a hand that would grip the kingdom so tightly that no one would dare to defy him. For years, the villagers endured his cruelty. They quickly learned that the new king was not one to be crossed. His decrees were harsh. His punishments were even harsher. Anyone who questioned his authority was met with swift and brutal consequences. The people lived in constant fear. Their once vibrant village now shrouded in an atmosphere of dread. But in the midst of this darkness was Prince Ikenna, Afamefuna's younger brother. Ikenna had inherited their father's kindness and wisdom, traits that Afamefuna despised. While Afamefuna ruled with fear, Ikenna sought to comfort the people, quietly working behind the scenes to ease their suffering. He visited the homes of the poor, mediated conflicts, and gave the villagers hope that perhaps not all was lost. This did not sit well with King Afamefuna. He saw his brother's actions as a direct challenge to his authority, a threat to the fear-based control he had worked so hard to establish. The whispers among the villagers, their soft-spoken gratitude towards Ikenna, fueled Afamefuna's anger. He began to view Ikenna not just as a brother, but as a rival, someone who needed to be put in his place. One evening, After hearing of yet another instance where Ikenna had intervened in his affairs, Afamefuna rage boiled over. He summoned his guards and stormed into Ikenna's quarters. The sight of his younger brother calmly reading a book by the dim light of an oil lamp only fueled his fury. "You think you can undermine me, Ikenna?" Afamefena's voice was a low growl, dangerous and filled with venom. Ikenna looked up, his expression serene, despite the clear threat in his brother's tone. "I do not seek to undermine you, brother. I only wish to help our people." "Help them?" Afamefuna spat. "You wish to turn them against me. You wish to make me look weak." "I only wish to do what is right," Ikenna replied softly. The king's eyes blazed with fury. "You dare speak of what is right? You dare question my rule?" Without warning, Afamefuna struck Ikenna across the face, the force of the blow sending him crashing to the ground. The guards stepped forward, ready to intervene, but the king raised a hand, stopping them in their tracks. "If you were not my brother," Afamefuna hissed, leaning down to glare into Ikenna's bloodshot eyes, "I would have snapped the life out of you right now." Ikenna, despite the pain, met his brother's gaze without flinching. "You will pay for your wickedness, Afamefuna," he said, his voice steady. "Lock him up!" Afamefuna barked, straightening up and turning away. His voice echoed through the palace, a command that sent shivers down the spines of all who heard it. The guards moved quickly, dragging Ikenna away to the palace prison, where he would remain. One time, the women, worn out and angered by King Afamefena's cruel reign, decided they could endure no more. With heavy hearts and firm resolve, they marched to the palace to voice their suffering. But instead of listening, the king coldly ordered his guards to flog them without mercy, their cries echoing through the palace walls. This was the final straw for many, but King Afamefuna was not a man easily satisfied. To crown it all, his hunger for power extended to his insatiable desire for women. Though he already had many wives, it was never enough. Every evening, he would roam the kingdom, his eyes sharp, searching for new conquests. Any maiden who caught his eye would be taken by force, her pleas falling on deaf ears. And as soon as he tired of her, he would discard her like a piece of rags. One fateful day, as he strolled through the village, he noticed Ojugo, a young woman whose beauty seemed to shine like the morning sun. She had just married Jidofo, the man she loved with all her heart. But the king, captivated by her beauty, cared nothing for love or vows. He ordered that she be brought to him. Ojugo's heart trembled with fear as she pleaded with the king, her voice quivering. "Please, your majesty, I have just married my husband. Let me go." But the king only laughed a cold, heartless sound. "I am King Afamefuna, the great and fearless ruler of Amoria. You belong to me, just like everyone else in this village, and I will do as I please." Jideofo, Ojugo's husband, stepped forward, his head bowed respectfully, but there was fire in his eyes as he spoke. "Long live your majesty. You may take anything I possess, my lands, my animals, but not my wife. I would rather die than see her taken from me." The king's laughter grew louder, more menacing, I admire your courage, young man, but it seems you have not been firm enough. His voice boomed with rage. How dare you challenge me? Let me remind you, I am your king. I own you. I own your wife. I own everyone and everything in this kingdom, and I will do as I please with whom and what I please. You choose to die for your wife? Then so be it. Before anyone could say anything, King Afamefuna took out his sword and cut off Jideofor's head in front of his hut before the eyes of the villagers. Ojugo's screams pierced the evening air, filled with desperation and anguish. But the king's heart was as cold as stone. Without a hint of mercy, he asked his guards to seize her and drag her to the palace. The village, usually eerie with activities in the evenings, fell into silence. The people trembled in their homes. The king had done a lot of terrible things, but this one was the worst, an abomination. On getting to the palace, not minding the pain she was going through, King Afamefuna forced himself on Ojugo. Each moment was a torture for her. Her heart grew dark with bitterness. She swore in her heart to destroy King Afamefuna, even though she had no idea how. King Afamefuna's evil deeds had stirred the anger of the gods. At dawn, the village chief priest made his way to the palace, his face stern and eyes blazing with purpose. As he entered, his voice boomed through the great hall, echoing off the walls. King Afamefuna, you have committed a great abomination, a sin against the very soil of this land. Ogugu, the god of our ancestors, has sent me with a warning. You have stepped on the tail of the serpent, and the serpent shall strike when you least expect it. The words struck the air like thunder, but instead of fear, they ignited a fire of rage in King Afamefuna. He rose swiftly from his throne, his face twisted with anger, and jabbed his finger toward the priest. I fear nothing and no one, he roared. Go back and tell your gods that I do not fear them. With that, he turned on his heel and stormed away, his fury trailing behind him like a dark cloud. But the chief priest only chuckled, a low mocking sound that lingered in the air. The stubborn chicken learns obedience only inside the pot of soup, he said, his voice laced with warning. A word is enough for the wise. With a final glance to the king's retreating figure, the chief priest turned and left the palace. Over the next few weeks, King Afamefuna kept Ojugo within the confines of the palace, and used her whenever he felt the need to satisfy his lustful desires. Ojugo's heart was broken into 1,000 pieces. She was shattered and silently mourned the loss of her beloved husband, but she feigned respect and obedience to the king, silently bidding for the opportunity to escape from the palace. One fateful night, Ojugo gathered all the courage she could muster. The palace was quiet, with only a few guards patrolling the grounds. She had been watching them for days, learning their routine, and now was the time to act. The guards would switch shifts at a certain hour, disappearing into their quarters for a brief moment before the next group took over. Ojugo waited in the shadows, her heart pounding in her chest, every second feeling like a lifetime. Finally, the moment came. The guards, left their posts to change shifts. Without a second thought, Ojigo slipped out of her hiding place and darted towards the thick bushes. She ran with all the strength she had, the darkness swallowing her up as she disappeared into the night. The path was treacherous, and the night was full of unseen dangers. But nothing was more terrifying than the thought of staying another day with King Afamefuna. Just thinking about his name made her blood boil and pushed her to run even faster. She knew the king would be furious when he discovered her escape, and he would stop at nothing to find her. If he caught her, there would be no mercy. But Ojigo did not care. She would rather face the wild dangers of the night than remain trapped in that palace. She ran until her legs could no longer carry her, and even then she did not stop. She walked on, her spirit unyielding, determined to keep moving no matter what. Ojigo walked through the night, her steps driven by a fierce determination. She knew that it would take hours before the king even realized she was gone, and by then she would be far from Amoria. The darkness was her cloak as she wandered through unknown villages and crossed cold rushing streams. She had no clear destination in mind, only the burning need to be as far away as possible, to a place where King Afamefuna could not find her. Back at the palace, dawn broke with a roar of fury. King Afamefuna was livid when he discovered that Ojigo had escaped. His voice thundered through the halls as he commanded his men, "Search every bush, every village, find her and bring her to me." His rage was like a storm, shaking the very foundations of the palace. Even his wives kept their distance, knowing too well the wrath of the king when his pride was wounded. No one had ever dared to flee from King Afamefuna and lived to tell the tale. He was determined to make Ojigo an example, to show everyone that no one could defy him and escape unscathed. His men scoured the forests, combing through the bushes and venturing into neighboring villages, but they returned with nothing. The king's fury only grew with each failed report. He seethed on his throne, his anger a dangerous fire that burned within him. He could not strike the guards. They were his strength, his power. But Ojigo, she would pay dearly when he found her. Her fate would be sealed just like her husband's. Ojigo walked for days, pushing through the exhaustion that weighed down her every step. She only paused briefly when she stumbled upon a river, drinking deeply from its cool waters and letting the refreshing cold soothe her aching body. Her legs trembled with weakness, and her bones felt as if they might give way. But she knew she couldn't stop. Hunger gnawed at her, but it was a distant concern compared to the fear driving her forward. One day, as she trudged onward, she heard voices in the distance. The sound was faint at first, but it grew louder as she followed it, guiding her like a beacon. Eventually, she found herself at the edge of a wide river, where a group of young maidens were bathing and washing clothes. Their laughter and chatter filled the air, but as Ojigo approached, the noise died down. The women turned to look at her, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern. Ojigo tried to take another step, but her strength finally failed her. Her vision blurred and her head spun. With one last faltering breath, she collapsed to the ground, unconscious before she even hit the earth. When Ojiugo opened her eyes, she found herself in a dimly lit hut. The faint glow of a small fire casting shadows on the walls. She sat up slowly on the mat where she lay, her mind struggling to piece together what had happened. As she tried to make sense of her surroundings, a young woman entered the room, carrying a small calabash. The woman's face lit up with a warm smile when she saw Ojugo was awake. "Thank the gods you're awake," the woman said, her voice filled with relief as she approached. Ojugo instinctively tried to rise from the mat, but the woman gently pressed her back down. "No, sister, you are not yet fully recovered. Rest," she urged, her hands soft and reassuring on Ojugo's shoulder. Ojugo looked up at her, uncertainty clouding her eyes. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice trembling. The woman's smile remained kind and calm. "You are somewhere safe," she replied gently. "What is your name?" Ojugo hesitated, studying her face as if searching for signs of trustworthiness. After a moment, she answered, "My name is Ojugo." "All right, Ojugo," the woman said, her tone soothing. "Drink this and rest. When you wake, you will be as good as new," she added, offering the calabash to Ojugo. Ojugo eyed the calabash, unsure whether to accept, but something about the woman's gentle demeanor put her at ease. She took the calabash and drank the potion inside. The taste was strange, but comforting. Almost immediately, a deep drowsiness overtook her, and she drifted into a peaceful, dreamless sleep. When Ojugo woke up, she was surprised by how strong she felt. It was as if all her exhaustion and pain had melted away, leaving only the deep ache in her heart, which she feared would never heal. She stepped outside the hut just as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and orange. She wondered how long she had slept. As she stood there, taking in the surroundings, she noticed a group of young maidens in the distance, engaged in a fierce training with swords and spears. An older woman stood before them, shouting commands as they practiced. Ojugo watched in amazement, trying to understand what she was saying. Suddenly, a quiet voice beside her broke her thoughts. A woman must always be ready to defend herself. Startled, Ojugo turned quickly to see a beautiful dark-skinned maiden who looked to be around her age. The girl had approached so silently that Ojugo hadn't even noticed her presence. "Are they training to fight?" Ojugo asked, her eyes wide with realization. "Yes," the maiden replied with a nod. "Our mother has asked me to check on you. She would like to see you right away. Follow me." With that, the maiden turned and began to walk, expecting Ojugo to follow. Without hesitation, Ojugo fell into step beside her, curious about the world she had just stepped into. Like a lamb following its shepherd, Ojugo trailed behind the maiden, her mind filled with questions about this strange place. When they reached their destination, Ojugo was surprised. The mother, as they called her, was not what she expected. The woman was old, her body frail and bent with age, but her eyes were sharp, and her voice carried authority. The young woman who had cared for Ojugo earlier sat beside her, her warm smile still comforting. "Sit, Ojugo," the old woman commanded, in a language unfamiliar to Ojugo. Sensing her confusion, the younger woman quickly translated. The old woman's aged face softened with concern as she asked Ojigo where she had come from and how she had found their camp. Ojigo's eyes welled up with tears as she recounted her harrowing journey, the pain still fresh in her heart. The younger woman translated her words, ensuring the old woman understood every detail. When Ojigo finished, the women exchanged a sorrowful glance. "What do you plan to do now?" the old woman asked, her voice gentle but probing. Without hesitation and fire in her eyes, Ojigo's voice rose with raw emotion. "I want King Afamefuna head. I want him to pay for what he has done to me, to my husband, and to the people of Amoria." She fell to her knees before the women, her desperation clear. "I saw the maidens training outside. I want to learn to fight. I want to learn to defend myself." The women exchanged harsh words, their voices barely audible as they weighed Ojigo's plea. After a tense silence, the younger woman turned to her expression somber. "This is not a battle you can win alone, Ojigo," she said softly. "Then help me," Ojigo implored, her desperation clear. "Please help me bring down King Afamefuna." The woman's face marked with concern as she replied, "We are of a different tribe, Ojigo. We train our girls to fight and defend themselves, not for revenge, but for war. We cannot undertake such a mission." But Ojigo was not ready to give up. "If you cannot do this for me, then do it for my people," she pleaded, her voice filled with urgency. "The people of Amoria live in constant fear. Anyone who dares to stand up to him is killed without mercy. Please, I beg you. I want to wage war against King Afamefuna." The women conferred again, their whispers like the rustling leaves in the wind. They nodded occasionally, and finally they turned back to Ojigo. "We have decided to help you," the younger woman said, a small smile returning to her lips. "But first, you must learn the art of war. You will train with the maidens and learn how to fight and defend yourself. And when the time is right, we will face King Afamefuna." For the next 1 year, Ojigo immersed herself in the life of the warriors. She trained day and night tirelessly, pushing her body and mind to their limits. The maidens were unlike any warriors she had ever seen. Their movements swift and precise, their strength formidable. Ojigo learned their language, shared their meals, and found herself forming bonds of friendship. Her life in the camp took on a rhythm almost resembling normalcy. Yet, the nightmares of her past still haunted her. Each night, they reminded her of her mission, fueling her determination. And each morning, she woke with one goal in mind: to bring an end to King Afamefuna reign of terror. One morning, the young woman, whose name was Anan, stood at the edge of the training grounds, watching Ojigo as she skillfully wielded the sword. She had come to love Ojigo as her sister, and she could see the pain the young woman carried in her heart. It was evident in the way she fought. She trained rigorously, as if trying to free herself of something. It was already 1 year since she came into their camp, tired, broken, and hungry, and a lot has changed since then. Now, she was ready to face her fears. Anan approached Ojugo that morning after her training. "Walk with me," she said, offering her a warm smile. Ojugo, who had equally become fond of the woman, fell into step beside her. They went into her room where it was quiet. As they sat facing each other, Anan looked into Ojugo's troubled eyes. "It's time, Ojugo. We have watched you this past year. I see the determination in your eyes when you fight, and I know that you are ready. Gather yourself together. I'll arrange the bravest maidens to go with us. We leave in 2 days." Ojugo looked up, surprise evident in her face. "You are coming too?" Anan smiled. "Of course. I am the battle commander, and I have come to love you as my sister. I cannot send out the warriors without guiding them. Neither can I leave you alone to go on this journey on your own." Ojugo looked at Anan, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you very much, Anan. I don't know how to repay you for your kindness, but I hope I get the chance to repay you someday." Anan touched. "All thanks to the gods. Now go and get some rest." As Ojugo walked to her hut, a sense of dread filled her. She had no idea if she would be able to face King Afamefuna, or if she was even prepared to step into the palace that was filled with so many bad memories. All the same, there was no better time to face King Afamefuna. It was dark by the time the warrior maidens stepped into Amoria. They hid themselves in the bushes, waiting for the right moment to strike. The morning came like every other day. The birds were chirping away happily. The sun was up in the sky. King Afamefuna had sat down to eat his morning meal when he heard a commotion outside. He made to ignore it, but the noise became louder. The next thing he heard was the sound of swords clashing. He quickly got up and walked out to see what the commotion was about. To his greatest surprise, some of his guards lay on the floor. The rest stood poised with their swords, but they looked unwilling to fight. "What is going on here?" the king barked, his voice echoing across the compound. Ojugo stepped forward. "Remember me, your majesty?" she asked, her voice heavy with rage. King Afamefuna burst into laughter. "You little witch! You dare to defy me! Now you have brought these girls. To do what? Today I will show you how to fear me. And your friends, I'm sure I can find a few to enjoy myself," he gloated. Ojugo, filled with rage, wanted to pounce on him right away, but Anan, who was standing close, held her back. Now she could see how evil and vile Afamefuna truly was. The king looked at his guards and signaled for them to attack, but none of them moved an inch. They dropped their swords and moved away from the king. Afamefuna barked in anger as he looked around him. "How dare you disobey your king?" But not even one of his warriors was moved. None was willing to stand and fight for him. Ojugo laughed. "This was even easier than I thought, King Afamefuna. Even your warriors have abandoned you in your time of need. They do not love you, they fear you. But in a time like this, they know you cannot harm them. Now they have abandoned you. So it's you and I now, one on one, she said, smiling as she approached him. For the first time, she saw what looked like fear flash across his eyes. Ah, now you fear, she taunted him further. The king quickly masked his feelings, took off his cloak, and picked up his sword. I fear no one, let alone a mere woman. For the first time, he was truly afraid, deep down. The words of the priests came rushing back into his ears. Indeed, the serpent had come back to strike him. But he would not go down easily without a fight. He looked into Ojugo's eyes. I would rather die than watch a woman destroy all that I've built, he retorted, ready to launch. Without wasting time, Ojugo swiftly launched first. Your wish is my command, your majesty, she said as she raised her sword, and with one swift blow, his head rolled off to the ground, his eyes wide open with shock. The fall of King Afamefuna brought a different kind of joy to the entire village. The king's warriors carried Ojugo high on their shoulders, singing her praises. The dawn of a new era had come at last. Finally, they were free from oppression. The village threw a big feast for the warrior maidens to thank them for giving them their freedom. The warrior maidens ate and made merry with the people of Amoria. Ikenna, the former King Afamefuna brother, who had been locked up for over 2 years now, was released alongside many others who the king had thrown into prison. Ikenna, who was a replica of his father in all ramifications, was crowned the new king of Amoria. Once again, peace returned to the village, and the people became the happy folk they used to be. After spending a few days with the people of Amoria, it was time for the maidens to return to their home. Anan looked into Ojugo's eyes. We have enjoyed being with you and your people, but we must return to our home. This is not goodbye, I hope. We would love to see you whenever you want to visit, she said with her ever-ready smile. Ojugo looked at her, and then the other maidens, and then she looked around her. Finally, her gaze settled on Anan's face. There is nothing left for me here but bad memories. I'm glad that my people are happy now. Therefore, I would like to do what would make me happy. You and every maiden here have shown me the true meaning of love. You all have taken my pain as yours and were prepared to give your life for me. Therefore, from this day forward, you are my family. Wherever you go and wherever you dwell, I will dwell. That is if you have me. Anan looked at Ojugo, her eyes filled with love for her. She took Ojugo in her arms. Of course, you will always have a place among us. We all are sisters. Welcome to the family. The other maidens took their turns to give Ojugo a warm hug, welcoming her into the fold. The now happy villagers bid the warriors from another tribe farewell as they marched back to their home. Ojugo knew that a new chapter in her life was about to open, and she would embrace it with her fingers crossed, hoping to make every moment she would spend with her new family count. Hey lovers, thank you for listening to my story.
If you are new here, welcome to my space. I hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you have not done so already, please hit the subscribe button. And to support the growth of our community, please give this video a big thumbs up and drop a comment. I'll take my leave now, but I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.